Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the InNOLEvation Mindset, powered by the Moran College of Entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Jules Johannemann, and for today's guest, I have Mr. Bob Garner, who's one of my favorite professors. Mr. Garner, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on the show. I have you for negotiations this semester,
Yes.
But for those who don't know, what other classes do you teach here within the college?
I teach a class called Managing Growth, which is pretty much the A to Z, how to scale and go through growing your business. And then I teach a franchising course. So I was a franchisee a while back. So the mechanism, it's a good way to get into start a business if you don't have an idea on your own.
Yeah. So what does an average day in your life look like on a day you're on campus teaching?
Because of parking, you have to get here real early in the morning, regardless of what time your class is. And so I have some quiet time and then prepare for what I'm going to be doing that day. And I teach 3 back-to-back, which is sometimes challenging, and then have office hours afterward if anybody needs any help.
Awesome. So you yourself are an FSU alumni. So what was your experience like being here? How many years ago were you here?
45.
Okay.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. FSU, I got here the second year of Bobby Bowden. So it was an immediate transformation of having no good football team, which I think we all rally around our sports, and going to where later in my adult life we had 14 seasons in a row where we were in the top 4, and that's never been done since. So it was quite a good time, and I was in the College of Business, which we started. The Entrepreneurship program started in the College of Business. So it was, I had fun. A lot of my closest friends are people that I went to college with. I was in a fraternity, and we still stay together with a bunch of those people. So it was just, overall, it was a great experience.
Awesome. So you haven't always been a professor here. So what did your career path look like coming right out of Florida State?
And so I spent 12 years with a Fortune 500 logistics company, Roadway Express, and I went to Valdosta, Georgia, moved to Miami to run the city operation, went to Atlanta, then I got my own facility in Montgomery, Alabama. And then after that, just got a little bored and was looking for maybe to go out and do something on my own. And my father, who started a bank, so maybe I've got some entrepreneurial blood, called me and said that Hardee's, the fast food chain, was looking for franchisees in the state of Arkansas, where I'd grown up a little as a kid. So I did my due diligence and looked around and found an area that I thought we could develop. And so I went and we opened 3 Hardee's restaurants in about 3.5, 4 years. And then upon selling them, needing for family reasons to get back to the South, I came back here, ran into one of my old professors, and he encouraged me to go back and get my master's. So at age 40-something, I went back and got my master's with the hope of being able to teach. And very fortunately, one of the young ladies in my MBA class was working out at Flagler College. And for those who are not familiar with the state of Florida, it's a private college in St. Augustine, and they had just opened up a satellite campus on Tallahassee Community College campus. And so I was able to get my foot in the door there, and I was hired. And so I taught for a total of 15 years there. But in about year 12, to me, it's a remarkable story. My youngest son was at FSU, which was I was very happy that he was able to get in here. So I wanted to play softball with him and some of his buddies. So to do that, I had to enroll in a class. And so I enrolled in an entrepreneurial finance class with my old professor. And during the course of the class, he became ill. And so he asked me if I would take over the class. And I did. And so for doing that, he then asked me if I would like to teach an adjunct class. So I got my foot in the door part-time at FSU. And so then when the entrepreneurship whole thing took off, I was able to get hired full-time at FSU, which I would have told you early in my career would have never been possible because I don't have a PhD. I just have a master's. But the good thing about the entrepreneurship program is I think we value experience a whole lot. And I think you guys, and you can maybe attest to it, learn from experience much as you do from education in theory.
Yeah. What do you feel like are some of the most important lessons that you teach students? If you could summarize it into 1 or 2 that you really want them to take away, what would those lessons be?
Well, the beauty, I'm blessed to be able to teach subject matter that is real life. So just my negotiation class, if you study and just take the concepts like having a good opening offer and making it less than you're willing to pay, and if you're selling something, put the price out there a little bit. You can always come back, and how to bargain and how to do concessions. I think just being on the real life, and also the biggest comments I get from students are they enjoy the stories because that kind of puts the concept to life.
Yeah.
So I'm just very blessed to be able to teach stuff that I think is very useful in real life.
Yeah, for sure. I know that franchising isn't always something that people hear a lot about on the business side. What did your experience look like in the franchise world when you're operating your own restaurants?
The good thing about franchise is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Basically, you're buying the right to use a system that's already in place. And so the success rate for franchises is generally north of 90%, whereas mom and pop businesses, maybe it's probably less than 25%. That was my experience. I went through the whole process and had to interview, and I actually had to work 40 hours in a Hardee's before they would even talk to me. They wanted to make sure that we understood what we were getting into. Just going through the process was pretty strenuous. And then the biggest thing about franchising is you own your own business, but you're playing by rules that somebody else dictates. So you really got to have a good understanding, and you do that by interviewing other franchisees of what the day-to-day is going to look like. Because there were some times when we butted heads over things that I thought would help me locally, but they're real big on consistency, so they don't let you deviate a whole lot.
Yeah. What are some of the other things like you've learned about yourself as like a leader that have helped you become a better teacher while you're running the franchise?
I think all of us have strong suits, and one of the things that I encourage you guys to do the same thing is figure out what you do well, figure out what you don't do, and what you do, you need to leverage that. What you don't do, you need to have people on your team that can help you do that. So my strengths are management, relationships, people, and so that fit really well into a business where each store had 40 or so employees. And even back at Roadway, we had a quality initiative that started, and I was selected to be one of the teachers that rolled that out. So even early in my career, I think, and going back to high school, I was my senior class president. I was president of my fraternity. I don't know how to explain that, but I just have always been in leadership positions, and I think that's just a strength of mine, and I have plenty of weaknesses too, but that just happens to be one of the ones that I had success at.
Yeah. What are some of the accomplishments you're most proud of looking back?
Won the Outstanding Teacher Award at Florida State. That's a very big accomplishment. I won an award at Roadway in the Miami terminal at one time. Our Hardee's restaurants, we were one of, and so I opened my first one in 94. So at the 97 National Convention, we were one of 5 franchisees recognized for outstanding performance. So, we were selected, even though there's people that have been doing it for years and years. We had only been doing it for 3 years, but we were selected for the way we emerged ourselves into the community. And that's just the whole networking thing that I am very big on and try to pass on to the students also. And the other, and this is just off the cuff, but in 2017, at age 59, I won a T-shirt for FSU Intramurals, all campus co-ed softball. So I actually won one when I was 20, and then I won one when I was 59. So I may be the oldest person ever to win one. I don't know.
It's funny. I talk to my dad a lot. My dad's an FSU alum too, and he's got like all they're in the attic somewhere. He saved all of his intramural shirts. So I see how they're like trophies when you get them.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
Especially at age 59, playing with a bunch of kids.
Yep. So I know you've moved around a lot in your career, but do you have a certain place that's been your favorite that you've worked? I know you said Valdosta, you worked in Arkansas and Miami.
Something about the little town in Arkansas. It's hard to believe. It's a town of 6,000, not a lot of amenities, no mall, but we actually looked at another town, and then when we visited this town, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. Brenda and I both, my wife and I, she was my partner in this deal, just felt this peace about this place. And even my kids now look at it through such rose-colored glasses. The time we spent there, housing's not great. There's not a lot of nice big houses. My house cost $40,000, I think, something like that. And it was, but it just the time there, and I was working 60, 70 hours a week, but just somehow the way, I think if you're familiar with small towns, when people move in from the outside, you're either an outsider or they embrace you like their own. And we were so blessed to have, the people just took such good care of us.
That's good. So speaking of community, one of the things that I wanted to touch on is the SAM Club that you're an advisor for. So do you want to explain a little bit about what it is?
Sure. When I was at Flagler, my kids wanted a club to join, so I tasked them with the responsibility of finding one. And so they came back and said there's an organization called the Society for Advancement of Management, and there's kind of two phases to it. You get to compete with other chapters across the United States for chapter awards, and that involves community service. And then there's also a written business, or a oral and written business case competition that goes with it. So I was the chapter advisor, and then when I moved to FSU, I liked the organization so much that I started it here. And so we've had just tremendous success, and I think you remember just the value that it brings to the students and giving back. And the food pantry that we do, and say we painted a house this weekend, and just getting kids in the mindset of giving back. And when you're blessed, that we need to return that. And then also the competition is good too. I think it's good that you learn, and especially in entrepreneurship, be able to stand in front of people and talk, because this is a 15-minute presentation, and then you get peppered with questions. So it's just a great experience all over. And I'm actually on the board of directors for the national organization, and FSU will be hosting it in Turnbull Conference Center this year. So we're excited about that.
Which is super exciting. I think for me, this is my first year in the program, and I think there's two facets to the community. I'm an out-of-state student, have family in Tallahassee, so I'm familiar with it, but it's nice to be able to meet locals and see their interactions with people who have known each other for 30 plus years, doing the Manna Food Pantry at some of the local churches. And then also getting to meet the kids in your program is also a great experience. You get to spend a lot of one-on-one quality time with them.
Yeah, one of the things I love is, and I see it, that the kids that are in the SAM Club together generally are friends for life. There's still pockets of kids that were in this and shared this experience that stay in touch with each other all the time, and that's neat for me to see.
Which is special. One of the other things, too, I wanted to ask you, I know we talked about some of your proudest accomplishments, but what have been some of the more difficult moments in your entrepreneurial journey?
I guess the only really one, and I was just blessed. We did very well. But when I moved back to Tallahassee, we still had one store. I sold the first two stores, and the person that bought them wasn't able to buy the third one because it hadn't been open for a year yet. And so when I moved back to Tallahassee, I had a manager, somebody who had worked for me for a while. But basically, if you're not there every day, and this is a valuable lesson too, it's getting harder and harder to find people who will take care of your business like it's their own. And he was well incentivized still, but just end up running the place in the ground. So we had to shut that down. And that's jobs for our employees that we had to terminate. And if you're not making money, you can't keep the doors open. But that was a pretty valuable lesson too, just that it's very hard. I think today it'd be easier because there is some technology that you can utilize, and we could be able to see what was going on. But not being there every day, he just pretty much ran into the ground. So we ended up having to close it down. That was sad, but it's one of those decisions. But it's something you learn from too. Yeah. I think we learn from our failures much more than we do from our success, because there's pain with our failures.
Yeah. One of the things I feel like I've taken the most away from your class is the ability to treat your employees right. So what are some of the things you would recommend to others looking to do the same thing, starting their own business? Just
treat people like you would want to be treated. And I told the story to you guys. Had reached out to one of my old bosses, and he had gone to FedEx Ground. And so before I did Hardee's, I was on my way to go to FedEx Ground, and I backed out on him late in the process. And after he cleared a space for me, and he was so gracious, he goes, "Wow, what a great opportunity." And I just really took that, because I think he had every right to not be happy with me. We're still friends to this day. I talk to him about every 6 months, and I just took that to how I wanted to treat my employees. And we treated them like family. And I think one of the things, and part of it is just that's the people that we are, but part of it too is turnover is expensive, having to hire and keep retraining people. And if you treat your employees, then they're going to stay with you. And so we had a turnover rate of around 50%, which is about one employee for every 2 you need for the year we replace. The industry average in fast food at the time was around 200 to 250.
Wow.
I like to think we did a lot of things right, and it wasn't the money part, minimum wage, and we also did raise our employees periodically to reward their work. But people can get minimum wage jobs anywhere. The reason they stay is because of the work environment.
Yeah.
We created an environment that, even though it's menial type work, we had fun, and I wanted my people to have fun. So, and I actually ended up having 2 high school students that got into management with me and actually were running closing shifts while they were in high school, which I thought was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Are there any things you would go back and do differently looking at your career path with that?
I can't just from a purely financial situation, it would have been nice to stay maybe and do the Hardys for a couple more years. But then when I look at it, number one, my family, we needed to get back. I have a stepson, and so we needed to get back closer to his dad, and so that's one of the big driving factors of our move. But the other thing is I look at how my career, and if I hadn't have moved at the time I wouldn't have run into my old teacher, and it wouldn't have got sick. And so when I look at how things turn out, and I look at what I've done for the last 24 years teaching, I love what I'm doing, and I feel like that this is what I'm very much at peace that I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I had this conversation with one of my roommates about the difference between like happiness and fulfillment. But what would you describe as like the difference between the two? Because to me, this sounds like fulfillment.
Happiness is based on happenings, and fulfillment is an inner kind of peace that you feel when you know just that feeling that I'm where I'm supposed to be, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I can even take it one step further. I actually interviewed for Chick-fil-A and was approved, but my wife and I had made a commitment that we would not leave Tallahassee until our kids graduated from high school. I had told Chick-fil-A, yes, I'd love to be aboard, but it will have to be a Tallahassee store, and you don't tell Chick-fil-A that because they have a lot of options, and I think I would have been a good option, but they have a lot of choices. But I'm at peace with that too. I just feel like that this is where God wanted me to be, what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's just nice to have that, like you said, the kind of the internal, not just the happiness, but it is deeper than that.
Yeah. So I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. But did you have any last minute thoughts or things you wanted to wrap up with?
No, I appreciate you hearing my story.
Yeah, of course.
Always. Just one thing is I love the fact that I'm able to invest in kids, and I love that Mrs. Garner is teaching up here now also, and I think that it's just it's a great life, and appreciate students like you and come to class and listen and hopefully take some of what you hear and apply it in the real life.
Of course. I know we all love having you. You're always our favorite teacher. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of the InNOLEvation Mindset. If you like this episode, feel free to share it or like it. And if you want to engage with us, feel free to leave a comment because we respond to all of them. Bye.